Welcome to A Slob Comes Clean, the podcast. I'm Dana White. I blog over at aslobcomesclean.com. That's where I share my personal deslobification process as I figure out ways to keep my own home under control. I share the truth about cleaning and organizing strategies that actually work in real life for real people, people who don't necessarily love or even like cleaning and organizing. Thanks for joining me today. I am going to be talking about perspective. Is it in Ratatouille where the food critic, that's what I always think of when I hear that word, a healthy dose of perspective. Anyway, all right, we are talking about perspective today because this is something that has been going through my head. I think it goes through my head a lot in the Christmas holidays, but just wanted to talk about this. This is something that we talked about in my Bible study class on Sunday this week that my husband and I are in. And we are going through a study right now called A Life Well Lived, and it's by Tommy Nelson. He is a pastor at Denton Bible Church, which I've never been to, but that's not too far from me. But it's on the book of Ecclesiastes, which is not really a book. In case you're not a believer, then maybe you have no idea. But if you are, you probably are like, yeah, I've never really studied Ecclesiastes very much. It's a lot about perspective. It's a lot about, looking at life. Life is hard. And so how do we deal with that? Anyway, but not that I'm going to go into that because that's not what I'm talking about in this podcast. But we got to talking in our group about perspective because, a lot of the message is live the life that you have right now. Live in the moment. Enjoy the moment that you have because you're not guaranteed any other moments. And like I said, this is an overall thing, so please don't quote me on the thing, but that's what we were talking about. And that is something that I have striven. Is striven a word? Strove for throughout my life. There was a speaker at a graduation that I went to when I was like in fourth grade. If you have a fourth grader, explain to them that graduations are super boring and they're not exciting no matter what people say. So unless you have someone you love graduating, it's really not worth it. So I remember, for one, realizing, wow, graduations are super boring. But also, I did get something from the speaker, and I'm glad that I was there because the speaker talked about enjoying each phase of life for what it is. Living each phase of life for the one that I am in at that moment, not throwing away this phase of life, looking forward to the next phase of life. My 14-year-old, about to be 15-year-old, is coaching my 10-year-old's basketball team this year. My husband is technically the coach, but my 14-year-old loves coaching. And so he is really taking that on and he's doing a good job. But, it's funny because this is the same child who at one point when he was like, I think in second grade, it's like, Mom, why don't they ever just teach us what we need to know right now? And what he meant was all of his teachers in kindergarten would say, well, you have to know this for first grade. And then in first grade, they would say, well, you have to know this for second grade. And then in second grade, they would say, well, you have to know this for third grade. He was like, why can't we just learn what we need to learn right now? And then he's coaching now and he's determined that he's going to get these kids ready for junior high basketball. And I'm like, honey, they need to enjoy fifth and sixth grade basketball for what it is right now. Don't forget, how you feel about, and you felt about that same kind of stuff when you were younger. But, living in the moment, yes, of course we have to prepare for the future. Of course we have to think ahead to things, but living in that moment is such a relief, honestly. And it just really got me thinking about perspective. One of the things we were talking about, they were kind of joking around. We have a lot of fun in our class. Anyway, but we were joking around and people were like, oh, well, to me, I think one of the questions was, what was the definition of success? And somebody's like, well, it was, and they named off everything that this other couple in the class has that, anyway, it's having this. And, it's funny because then talking about it, everybody's like, well, what you have over there to me sounds like the definition of success. But then you ask that person who has that thing and they have some other definition of, well, if I had such and such, which may be what somebody with more money has, or it might even be just what you have, so it's just this perspective of realizing there is no such thing as being like, okay, I mean, I don't want to say there's no such thing. Well, the reality is the more you have to maintain, the more stress that is. One of the things that the speaker was talking about in the study that Tommy Nelson was talking about was, talking to the guy who owns this huge company. And the guy who owns the huge company that he's worked his way up to, he makes so much more money now. He has so much more responsibility. He's like, I really miss the days when I was the cashier. When I first started and I had just gotten married and we lived in a rent house and we had a baby and we just barely had enough money to be able to do anything. But it's like life was so much simpler then. So it's just having that perspective on enjoy where you are instead of going, well, if only such and such were to happen, then I would be happy. Okay, so just some things that's made me think about. For my husband and I, when we first got married, we lived in an apartment and we were kind of in this phase of he was looking for, a job in his career, which we knew would mean possibly moving. But, we're kind of looking at different options of where that would be. And so we would look around this place where we lived and we worked. And we would look at houses and we think, what could we maybe afford? And I think we even went to a realtor once, even though we weren't for sure this is where we're going to be, because we knew he'd have to get a different job for us to be the one that would justify like committing to live there for a long time. But anyway, we had this and we, I remember looking and thinking, wow, I think we could afford this house that's, the most plain, most, lowest end of anybody that we know. We were like, okay, well, we're being really, really, practical maybe, okay, well, we're so super practical and we're willing to get the lowest end kind of, house of anybody that we know. And that would be perfectly fine with us. Aren't we wonderful? Whatever. Well, then we ended up moving about 2.5 hours away from there because of the job that he got. And it was a much smaller area. And it was a very different kind of a culture. And so we bought a house that was very much along the same lines as the one we had thought was the lowest end of things in the place where we had lived before and looked around at houses. We bought a house there. Well, then we started, kind of getting to know people and all. And over time, as we started to see a lot of other people who were perfectly satisfied and, as much as anybody is, but perfectly happy living in their homes, we realized, wow, this home that we thought was the lowest end of what we could do, like here we were being so super practical, was like way more than what we really, really needed. Because we would see people who were living in homes that were, 2/3 the size, sometimes maybe half the size of what we had, and we didn't have a huge house. But, people who were living in much smaller houses, much older homes, and they were perfectly fine. And it really changed our perspective on what we needed, which I feel like, then we moved 4 years after that. And that it really changed what we were looking for in a home. Our perspective on what we needed and what we'd be fine with was really different than it had been before, because we were just more, even though we didn't realize it and we would have said that we weren't, we were comparing ourselves to what everybody else had. And instead, kind of having this completely different perspective changed that for us. And we saw it differently, and that helped. Another thing was, we had thought that first time we moved and first bought a house, we were like, the country, we want to live in the country. And we didn't buy like actual land, but we had a 1/2 acre. And then we had 2 little boys. And this half acre had stickers. Now, if where you live, they don't have stickers, let me just tell you, they are evil, like completely and totally evil. They come out in, I'm thinking it's a Texas, Oklahoma kind of thing, because they come out specifically, I'm sure there's other places, but specifically when it's the hottest part of the summer, like crazy hot. And they are not the kind of stickers like, oh, there's something stuck to my sock. We're talking like you step on it and you feel like you have stepped on a nail. Like it hurts so horribly bad. I mean, it's horribly painful. And we had them. So we had this half acre, and we'd called about getting whatever treatments done to it, which was way outside of our budget. We couldn't possibly afford to have the half acre that was the nice big yard we wanted treated to not actually have those thorny stickers in it the way that, we desperately wanted to not have them. So my kids, here we had this great big yard, but my kids couldn't really play in it comfortably because, when they're little and they're falling down all the time, they would get stickers. I mean, that's how bad they were. Like if you walked through certain parts of the yard at certain times, you would your entire shoes, socks, shoelaces, everything were just covered in these horrible stickers. So it's like, oh, yay, we have a half acre. Oh, yeah, it's not really what we thought because it's also got these stickers in it. Well, then my husband would, the lawn people told us the very best thing you can do is to bag your grass, and so that you're not just spreading those stickers out again. So we have a half acre and we can't just mow it. We have to actually bag the grass, which meant my husband was spending a lot of time working on the yard when we had 2 little kids at home, like little teeny tiny kids. And I was in those new days of stay-at-home momness where I was like, you're home. Oh, wait, you have to go spend 2 hours in the yard tonight. Oh, wait, you have to go spend another 2 hours. So, changing our perspective on that helped us when we bought a house when we moved after that to go, yeah, we don't need all that huge amount of space because there's a lot to maintain when you have that. Now, we maybe could have found something without stickers, but it was like, no, we needed that. Now we're in a house with a really tiny yard and we're like, we wish we had a bigger yard. And instead of me going, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I had a bigger yard? Believe me, I go to other people's homes who have all this land and the kids just run. And I'm like, oh, and then I think, wait, they spend a lot of time maintaining this. And I'm actually okay with not having that. Okay. Yes, we would like to look for something at some point that has a little more, but trying to have that perspective of what does it actually require to maintain that. And just letting myself, as I experience life, just go, okay, that was a failure. Let it change my perspective so that I can do things better in the future. One of the things that really got me thinking about this was I had 2 different Christmas parties in my house that I've had already. And one of them was for teenagers and one of them was for adults. The teenagers were all teenagers who I know, they're friends of my kids, but a lot of them hadn't been in our home. Like the girls hadn't, we have boys, so the girls hadn't been in our home before. Most of the boys had. But the adult party was basically all people who had never been in my home before and people I don't really know that well. We might be friends on Facebook and I might see their, okay, I finished my tree. And it's like, oh, that looks like a magazine, And so that I had to kind of just let it go. Well, we had the teenager party first. And this sweet girl, 14-year-old girl walks in and she's just like, your home is so pretty. And she was so genuine. Your home is so pretty. Oh, I love your Christmas decorations. And it just did my heart so much good because I know this girl's mama is way more fashionable than me. But she was so sweet about it that helped me with my perspective for the group that was coming several days later of people who I don't know as well. and people who honestly kind of were making me nervous about them seeing my house and how it is not any kind of a decorator type of house. And seeing that just made me go, or her, showing me that perspective that she thought it was wonderful. That just helped me chill out. And here's a big part of my perspective on all of this. A lot of my perspective has changed through the years of having this slob blog. Knowing that there are people in this world, there are many, many, many people in this world who need to see imperfection in other people. Some of them respond more graciously to that imperfection than others. But there are a lot of people who need to see. That's why I think what I do is fairly successful. There are a lot of people who need to see, oh, so not everybody else's home is perfect. Okay, good. That is a gift for me to give people. I used to only worry, and I don't want to say only, but I would work on my house. I would stress out about it, hope that I noticed everything, and be so paranoid about what people were going to think of me if I missed something horribly embarrassing in my cleaning efforts. And through this whole blogging process of realizing, wow, there are a lot of people out there who need to know that it's not super easy for everybody in the world but them. It's helped me change my perspective on letting people into my home. Yes, I want it to be clean and comfortable, and I don't want them to be grossed out or be afraid to eat or whatever. I want people to be comfortable. But there are a lot of people who need to see an imperfect home. They need to see that not everybody has the designer decorator tree. My ornaments don't match at all. Like, not even the littlest bit. They don't match at all. They are randomly collected from all over the place. I love it personally. My kids think it's perfectly fine. I guarantee you, if there were 30 people in my home the other day, which there were about maybe a few less than that, there were people who probably thought, wow, okay, all right. But I know from my perspective and what I've experienced, there were people in this home, I don't know who they are, but there were people who needed to see, oh, okay, not everybody has a perfect decorated house. This kind of brings me to, and this makes me laugh, but I got my first negative review on Amazon, which honestly, because of perspective, I have no problem with. Like, it doesn't even... I was kind of like ready for it because I know there's going to be negative reviews. Let me just tell you just a little backstory on that. When I wrote 28 Days to Hope for Your Home, I initially released it only through like buying it as a PDF through my website. And the reason was that I was petrified to put it on Amazon because of the whole review thing. I thought, well, somebody's going to read it and they're not going to understand and they're going to hate it and they would leave reviews. And so that scared me. After it was, fairly successful and I was getting good feedback, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. But that was so scary to me. And as I would get a negative review here or there on that, yes, it stung. It was criticism. And so it stung at first. But then I started to see something. Some people would just be like, this is stupid. And you're like, okay, well, that didn't tell anybody anything anyway, whatever. But if somebody actually wrote a thoughtful, like well-worded review on why they didn't like this book and they only gave it 1 or 2 stars or whatever, they would say basically things that people needed to know about the book. So, for example, with 28 Days to Your Home, 28 Days to Hope for Your Home, the bad reviews basically were things like, this is so ridiculously simple. Seriously, how do some people not know this kind of stuff? Like, what is the big deal about reminding somebody to do their dishes? Like, oh my goodness, I can't believe anyone would need to be talked through this kind of stuff. And I realized, okay, those are actually really good reviews because the person who's desperate, the person who 28 Days to Hope for Your Home was written for, the person who's like, I don't get it. they're skeptical. And so those negative reviews are probably the ones they're going to read. And those are the ones that make them go, okay, yeah, so this person is being critical that this is so ridiculously simple, which confirms that it's actually going to be simple enough for me, because they're the person who's been like, yeah, I just feel like it's a foreign language when I read an organizing book, so that kind of stuff, having the perspective on that, but then just saying it's okay because that perspective is helpful to someone else. And my home being imperfect is actually helpful. And that perspective, me looking at it that way, allows me to take a deep breath and let people in the front door and say, this is my reality, and maybe it'll help you either feel better about your home because you're like, wow, I'm not that bad. Or it makes you go, oh, here's a happy, healthy family that's living in a home that's not decorated like it's in a magazine. Okay, so it really is, because I'm telling you that it's like us with that house. When we thought that this was the very lowest, least fancy house we could possibly get, it's like, oh, that's the lowest, but that's what we're willing to do. And then to realize, oh yeah, to other people, that was a mansion, and just having that perspective shift is really, really key. So anyway, my negative review, which by the time this comes out, I mean, there's always new reviews coming up, but there's almost 100. Y'all, if you could leave a review, if you've read the book, I would so greatly appreciate it, because I'm excited to get to 100 reviews. But, so anyway, the first negative review, let me see if I can find it real quick, was, basically, if you need a cheerleader to help you do the dishes and do your laundry and sweep the kitchen floor or something like that, I'm not reading it, so I'm not exactly, but then I guess this is the book for you. But if you need actual, like, real cleaning organization or wisdom or whatever, then this is not it. Anyway, but it was like, well, you know what? Perspective wise, this person's right. I mean, this person is right that if you need a cheerleader to help you do those basic things, then it's totally the book for you. So, having that perspective and going, okay, that is a different way to look at it that makes me able to relax, which makes me willing to move forward. And that's the key. I have to change. I have to readjust my perspective to the point where I'm willing to keep moving forward, because it's when I just go, well, what's the point? That's when I need a perspective shift. But here's the funny part to me. Oh, it was on Goodreads. No, it wasn't. No, there's one on Amazon, but there's a negative review on Goodreads too. But what is so funny to me about the one on Goodreads, I don't remember what that one said, but anyway, was they had, I guess you can add a category or something, like suggest a category that you would put this book in. And on Goodreads, it was home decorating. Are you laughing? Because anyway, if you're not, I'm embarrassed. But like, that was so funny to me, because I was like, well, obviously this person's perspective was incorrect when they read the book, because they thought it was a home decorating book. And it's so not at all by any means or stretch of the imagination. But anyway, so, just saying this is the perspective shift. Other things to do. One of the things that really made me think about this is here I'm stressing over my home and trying to adjust my perspective that, the teenagers thought it was great and thought it was lovely. And which means that I guarantee you there's, people in this world who, this is perfectly great too, and then having that perspective that I was trying to use to help myself be okay with all these, grown people who were going to be in my house that I didn't know very well. But then I read this, I didn't actually read the article, which is honestly a pet peeve of mine as a blogger, but I read the little thing that came across Facebook, and it was about, I think, kids or somebody who was working on getting Christmas trees for, families that couldn't afford a Christmas tree. And I was just like, oh, yeah, there's a lot of people in this world who would just be happy for a Christmas tree. And there are a lot of children who don't even have that. And then, Yeah, I lived in Thailand and I've seen people living in a village of cardboard boxes and, just that perspective change. And even though I consider myself someone to, have traveled in the world, have been in third world countries, whatever that means exactly, but have seen people who live with like almost nothing. I've experienced that and seen that, but just getting caught up in life and having to have those moments where you go, it's like I just have to physically shake my head and say, I need a perspective change. I need to change my perspective on what I've got. I guarantee you there's someone out there who has it worse. Because if you have any kind of a device where you can be listening to a podcast, somebody has it worse than you. For one thing, you've got the hope. I mean, you've got access to 113 podcasts of somebody yakking on and on and on about cleaning and organizing from the disorganized person's perspective. And, like that, just that perspective of, okay, well, I've got something, or I have a roof over my head that's housing all of my clutter or whatever. But, just that perspective change, thinking along those lines. So look for those ways to change your perspective. Either talk with someone or have those conversations with people that are difficult, and go volunteer or, I'll just be honest with you. We like to do the things where it's very simple ways of volunteering. Just I know it's over now for this year, but the shoeboxes, Operation Christmas Child, those shoeboxes, those are a great perspective changer, because when you start to realize how much a child somewhere is going to be thrilled to have a toothbrush and toothpaste and small things that can fit in a shoebox, that's just going to brighten their world completely. It's really a perspective changer. So finding those ways to look at something from a perspective of someone who doesn't have as much as you have. Okay. I think I have been yakking for quite a while. Oh yeah, it's been a while. Okay. And here's some parenting advice, even though I don't give parenting advice, and the older my kids get, the more glad I am that I don't give parenting advice, because let me just tell you something. They're like their own people. Yeah. There's no such thing as, anyway, I love my kids and I honestly have great kids, but yeah, the older they get, the more I'm like, oh, thank you, Lord, that I did not start a blog about parenting. Let me tell you that. Okay. So, anyway, one thing that I will say for us is that I miss, and that's why I'm talking about this, and I'm glad that we did it. And that is, it was always my goal to manage my children's perspective. When they were young enough, I would manage their perspective. And I know this is like too little too late for those of y'all listening and actually needing any of this, but, I would plant in their head what they needed for Christmas. So if I'm like, you know what, my boys need a basketball goal, and they need, they need that because they're at the age where they need to, that's something that they enjoy, and they've done it at somebody else's house. And I realized, yeah, we need a basketball goal. How do we not have one? Whatever. I would plant it in their head that you need a basketball goal. Or, oh, my daughter was getting to the age where she really, really, I've seen her love playing in a dollhouse. Well, left to their own devices, they're coming up with all these crazy ideas like iPads and video cameras and phones, and which my kids learned really early on that was never going to happen. But at least for Christmas kind of gifts. But for that, it's like I would plan it in her head. I would run across one at a really great price at Costco, and I would go ahead and buy it. And then I would plant in her head that this is what you're going to, ask for, or, just that kind of stuff. I do see the benefits of that. My kids have, their expectations are very practical for Christmas because, we early on, before they knew any better, we really tried to manage their perspective on what your expectations are going to be for Christmas. And I know that on the TV shows, kids make these crazy long lists and stuff. But if you don't do it that way, then your kids are going to know the way that you do it. So anyway, trying to manage those perspectives and finding it. I'm always looking for opportunities I'm not terribly successful at it, but I am always looking for opportunities for them to experience and see that not everyone lives the way that we do. I mean that in a lot of people in this world don't have what we have, so let's try as a family to be exposed to that kind of stuff. And just that alone will really change perspective. Even if it's, just using that as your reason for going through and decluttering before Christmas, saying, hey, did you know that there is because, we have them around. They're more prevalent than I ever realized before. But, do you know there's a children's home down the road that houses kids? We pass such and such place when we go to grandma's house and you know what that is? That's a place for kids who don't have moms and dads. And so they don't have anybody to buy them Christmas presents. And, so why don't we go through your stuff and the stuff that's really, really good? We can, give that to somebody who needs it, or let's go buy presents to donate to these different, organizations that help with that. In case you're concerned. Believe me, I know I got real cynical when I grabbed something off of an angel tree one time and they asked for an iPad and an Xbox. And I was like, yeah, I don't buy that for my own kids. But anyway, I do know I have a good friend who's done foster care quite a bit. And she said on Facebook one year, she was like, thank you so much to those of you who donate to these toy drives for foster kids, because she had gotten 2 new girls. She had her own 2 girls and she'd already shopped for Christmas for them. And then they had a placement of 2 other girls, 2 girls come in as foster kids in their home. And, it was like 3 days before Christmas. And she was like, well, what am I supposed to do? Because, I've already gotten Christmas for my kids and I want to make sure that they get an equal Christmas to that, because we don't want them to feel like, we want them to make sure they feel that they're part of the family. And so through this, gifts for foster kids, she was able to go to whatever place it was. I don't know. I'm not giving great details, but she was able to go to the place and get them gifts so that the girls that had honestly, that's a traumatic experience for those children. Right before Christmas, they're having to go out of the home they're familiar with and into a home with complete strangers. And so she was able, because of the generosity of people who've donated to those toy drives, she was able to go and get gifts for these girls so that they could all have a Christmas and they could feel totally and completely part of that new family that they had just joined a few days before. So there really is purpose behind those kinds of things. And those are a great way to help with your kids' perspective or help with your own perspective around this time of year. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. Don't forget to go get your copy of How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind. It is available wherever books are sold, and it is available in audio format, either MP3 or downloadable on audible.com, or you can get it as a CD. Somebody was asking how to gift the audio version, and that is very easy to do as a CD. You can also get it for Kindle or Nook or the other types of e-readers. You can also get it, obviously, in paperback wherever books are sold. So make sure you get that, and I would love it if you would leave a review when you are done, even if it's a bad review. Just give your reason why it's a bad review. But anyway, although I hope it's not. The other thing, too, to remember is that I'm really enjoying, it's small at this point, very small, but getting going on our Kindred Spirits Facebook group it's an exclusive group that is available as a reward for those who are patrons of this show through patreon.com/A Slob Comes Clean. If you are a patron at the $5 level, then one of your rewards is that you can be part of this exclusive Facebook group where I am determined like steely determination that it will remain a safe environment for us to just support one another. And it's really beautiful to see that happening. So go to patreon.com/A Slob Comes Clean to find out how to become a patron. And if you are able, what did I just say? Oh, or you can go to aslobcomesclean.com/podcasts with an S, and there's the link to Patreon there. Okay, thanks for joining me, and I will probably not talk to you next week, but I will have a podcast for you coming out the week after Christmas, because we all know, well, you maybe don't know. If you're new to this whole realm of decluttering obsession, the week after Christmas, the week between Christmas and New Year's Day is the time when the whole entire world goes decluttering crazy. So there's something crazy about it that happens, but make sure that you're checking in at aslobcomesclean.com. I am going to have a new series of emails that you can sign up for called 30 Days of Decluttering Inspiration to kind of get you through that January time and keep your focus and keep your inspiration high for getting your house under control. So thanks for joining me, and I will talk to you guys after Christmas. Merry Christmas. Bye.